Money Talk with Melanie features lively discussions of a wide range of global, domestic, and kitchen table financial topics. Guest interviews include entrepreneurs, CEOs, and politicos who are experts in their fields. Be sure to listen up. This is important because it's your money. Your money. Be sure to listen to Money Talk with Melanie. Money Talk with Melanie. Thursdays, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern Time on 98.7 The Coast.
And good evening. Welcome to this week's episode of Money Talk with Melanie. I'm your host, Melanie Collette, broadcasting live from beautiful Wildwood, New Jersey, here on 98.7 The Coast. And happy St. Paddy's Day to you all. Those of you who are fully Irish, half Irish, partially Irish, as quiet as it's kept. For those of you who have seen a picture of me or my little logo, where there's a cartoon picture of me, you may or may not have noticed that I am a well-melanated woman. And you may be thinking, does she celebrate St. Paddy's Day? Well, indeed, I do. And quiet as it is kept, there are many of us who are well-melanated, as I like. That's my own phrase, but you can feel free to use it. Those of us who have more melanin than others. Many of us have Irish blood in our bloodline. Now, you can, consult your local biology textbook and figure out why that may or may not be, or consult a history book, either one or both, and figure out why that may be the case, why I could have Irish or many African Americans have Irish in their bloodline. But I choose to celebrate the diversity in my bloodline and celebrate along with my Irish brothers and sisters on days like today, and wish you all a happy St. Paddy's Day. Because why not? Because we have more in common than not, in my opinion. So happy St. Paddy's Day to you all. And nobody parties like the Irish. Just say, I can't hang with you all. I'm just saying. I was celebrating with some of my fully Irish brothers and sisters last Saturday, and boy, oh boy, I love you, but man. Anywho, the Melanie Media recap. I did Newsmax this past week, and what did I talk about? Two things that I talked about. The Pfizer CEO. You know, these people have a lot of nerve. But anyway, the CEO of Pfizer says we may just need a fourth shot of the Pfizer vaccine to get full protection against the COVID virus. And one of the things that I said when Newsmax questioned me about it is, why in the world would we listen to the CEO of Pfizer or anyone who had a stake in making gobs of money off of the Pfizer vaccine, like of all people? Why would we not just listen to our doctors and do our own research should the CDC decide to release it? Because I don't know if any of you have heard that the CDC has been withholding information because they didn't think that the public could handle it. And by the way, they work for us, so they don't really have a right to do that. But that's what they've been doing. So that's another whole problem. But yes, the CEO of Pfizer was on the Sunday shows making his rounds, saying that he thinks we're going to need a fourth shot. And Newsmax asked me how I felt about that. And I told Newsmax that the Pfizer CEO could take that whole fourth shot and do something with it. So there's that. I'll talk to my doctor and do my own research and decide what I'm going to do about that fourth shot. And I would strongly suggest that you absolutely do the same. And then we also discussed some problems that cities are having with the very liberal bail policies and the crimes going on in some of the cities in New York, in California. And I mean, people are being accosted in museums, in churches, literally by people who have rap sheets a mile long. We're talking, 40 and 50 previous arrests. Why are these people still in the streets? And these tend to be in cities where they are predominantly run by Democrats, Democrat AGs. They're not following the laws. These people should be sued, in my opinion. You go there to follow the law, to enforce the law, and these people are not enforcing the law. It's a whole problem. It's a problem, and it needs to be fixed. That's why in places like California, their AGs are being they're trying to recall their AGs because they're not doing their jobs. They're supposed to be defending the victims, not the criminals, but they seem to be defending the criminals. It's a problem, and they're just letting them back out on the street to reoffend. So if you wanted to catch exactly what it is that I said, what the video in particular about the Pfizer CEO went viral, something about the way I articulated what he could do what the Pfizer CEO could do with that fourth shot. You can follow me on any of my social media at Money Talk Mel is my Twitter handle, or at Money Talk with Melanie on Facebook, or on IG, Instagram at Melanie T. Collette. Don't message me there because I won't answer you. I'm just saying, because I get a lot of junk on IG. I don't understand what the problem is. People are crazy. Anyway, our guest this evening, I'm very excited about. Our first hour guest is Richard Vague. He's the Secretary of Banking and Securities for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and the author of the book, The Case for a Debt Jubilee. And he's going to talk to us about the political and social aspects of student loan debt forgiveness, which I thought was a really interesting topic. I'm very curious what he's going to say about this. This topic is fodder on my social media quite often. He's going to explain to us what he means by a debt jubilee and the whole topic of student loan debt forgiveness. Wow. And then for the 8 o'clock hour, we're going to switch gears a little bit and speak with Ron Hamlin, who's the CEO and founder of I've been calling it Virtual Overload all week, and it's Virtual Reload, as if I can't read. I'm reading it, and it's Virtual Reload. It's Virtual Reload is the name of the company, and he's going to talk to us about money making with esports. Shocking information. And I'm going to be completely honest with you about this. I was lukewarm on the topic, but complete and total bias, okay? Because I'm a nerd, and I'm not into like game playing and wasting time. I'm an academic. I'm a very serious person. Political, I'm a politico. I'm an academic. I'm in the books and serious things, and I don't think people ought not waste time playing games. And why are you doing sports? After all, it's not even a sport. Basketball is a sport. So I was lukewarm on the whole topic. But now, I am wise enough to know that just because I'm not into it doesn't mean that it's not a thing. So that's why I decided to explore the topic. So when I was researching it for the show, I was indeed enlightened. So I'm kind of excited now. I was lukewarm when I started, but when I did the research for the show, I'm kind of excited to talk to Ron Hamlin. And I think that if you don't know anything about esports, and to be honest, I'm a little concerned now for parents who are like, don't do esports. A lot of colleges have esports programs, and high schools and places like that. So stay tuned for the second hour if your kids have been talking about this esports thing, because there's probably going to be some good information there for you as well. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce the first guest, Richard Vague. Like I said, he's the Secretary of Banking and Securities for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and the author of the book, The Case for the Debt Jubilee. Let me give you his brief bio. Prior to his 2020 appointment, he was the managing partner of Gabriel Investments. Previously, he was co-founder, chairman, and CEO of Energy Plus, an electricity and natural gas company. Vague was also co-founder and CEO of two banks and founder of the economic data service, Tycos. He currently chairs the Governor's Woods Foundation, a nonprofit philanthropic organization. His new book is The Case for a Debt Jubilee. And without further ado, Richard Vague. Good evening.
It's such a privilege to be here. I thank you for including me.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for coming on the show. This is a very interesting topic. It gets talked about. Of course, I'm sure you're aware. It's in the news all the time. Should there be debt forgiveness? Shouldn't there be debt forgiveness? The progressives politically want Joe Biden to use his executive powers to do student loan debt forgiveness. A lot of people who voted for Joe Biden did so because they thought that he was going to forgive student loan debt, and now he's kind of like he's not doing it. Of course, people on the conservative side of the aisle are like, I paid my student loans. Nobody should get student loan forgiveness. There is an economic, like an overarching economic argument to be made for student loan forgiveness, for sure. So I thought it was a good idea to have you on the show. So I'm excited to talk about this.
Well, you're so gracious, and you framed the problem perfectly. So I'm glad to be here to be able to discuss it.
Is there anything that I left out of your bio that you'd like the audience to know?
You did me you made me sound better than I am. So I wouldn't add a thing.
Okay, wonderful. So let's talk about the student debt thing. How much debt are our students in? I know how much I'm in. I have some very expensive degrees that make me that proves that I'm super smart. So
Well, we already know you're super smart. We didn't need to know that you had degrees in debt to know that you were super smart. So, if you don't mind, let me just give a little bit of background on the debt question.
Did we lose you? You still there? I can hear you.
Yeah. So let me just give a little bit of background on debt. The way I think that is appropriate to think about household debt, and household debt is obviously mortgage debt and credit cards and student loans and other things as well, is to look at that number and divide it into GDP and watch that trend through time. And if we do this, and we start right after World War II in 1945, household debt in total was only 35% of GDP. And today, after all we've been through, debt has been mounting up and mounting up and mounting up, and we're now at 172% debt to GDP. So debt is 5 times greater, and therefore a 5 times more of a burden on the average household than it was a couple of generations ago. And the consequence of that, obviously, is people who have that much debt have less to spend on those things that bring vibrant economic growth. They have less capacity to buy houses, less capacity to add to an existing house, and less capacity to buy cars, take vacations, do other things. So one thing to keep in mind is it's not just student debt. We have all sorts of debt that has mounted up to a huge number over our lifetimes. Now, inside of that, we have student debt, which is now totals, 10 years ago it was, let's call it $300 or $400 billion, and today it's $1.8 trillion. So student debt has really been mounting up, and irrespective of what you think about the solution, the problem is there, and it's staring us in the face.
Okay, that's true. Now, I would argue that the government has set us up for this problem, and I'll tell you how. Well, you probably already know how, but for the audience's sake, who may not be aware or wasn't paying attention, there was a period of time, and I think the government is still doing it, where the government was just very, very freely subsidizing education to make it easier to provide more access to education by just like quote unquote giving away this money, these student loans, which was driving the cost of education up. So institutions were saying, well, great, if the government's going to pay for it, we're just going to raise the price if the government's going to give us all this money. So then that, I think, led to the cost of education going up and people going into higher amounts of debt for their education. And so, like, it's a cycle, dare I say, kind of a scam.
Well, what you say has a lot of truth to it. And, it's been kind of a vicious cycle. Because as you say, as debt has been made more freely available to students, universities have fully utilized and taken advantage of that in terms of, the challenges they have and their need to raise tuition. And more, I think, a huge part of that has been there's been an emergence of what I call the for-profit colleges, colleges that in many cases have very poor graduation rates, may even close down in the process of you trying to get your degree, offer courses and offer degrees that don't really get you ahead in terms of make you more desirable for a company to hire you, what have you. So you have the very tragic situation where folks who thought they were doing the right thing, got the loan, went to a college that ended up not being that great of a place for them to have gone. Here they are. They may not have even completed their degree. They have $20,000 in debt or $50,000 in debt or $100,000 in debt. So the dilemma for those folks is particularly acute because they haven't really increased their earnings power.
Very true. We're up against the break, but I definitely want you to hold on to that thought about for-profit colleges. You're listening to Money Talk with Melanie. My guest this hour is Richard Vague. We're talking to him about the political and social aspects of student loan debt. We'll be back on the other side of the break.
This is important because it's your money. Your money. Money Talk with Melanie. Money Talk with Melanie. On 98.7 The Coast.
Welcome back to Money Talk with Melanie. We're speaking with Richard Vague. He is the Secretary of Banking and Securities for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and the author of the book, The Case for a Debt Jubilee. We're speaking to him tonight about the political and social aspects of student loan debt forgiveness. And before the break, we were talking about the for-profit colleges and kind of the impact that they've had on student loan debt. And you were saying that that they were part of the issue, if you will, that some people went into debt with these for-profit colleges and kind of didn't get what they bargained for.
Absolutely. I would say of this rise to $1.8 trillion in student debt, at least a couple of $100 billion are these types of colleges. And by the way, let me hasten to interject that these opinions are my own rather than Pennsylvania's. But, there's any number of these where the degree really doesn't enable the student to get a better job. There's situations where the school has closed. There's situations where it just didn't work the way they expected. And there's a lot of regret out there, I think, for folks that have a lot of debt now and have not really increased their earnings power.
Now, would you say, in your opinion, as an author and as someone who's very well versed in this area, that if the government is going to lend money for colleges and education, it would be similar to if you were going to purchase a house or purchase a car or buy anything else of value for thousands of dollars, that it would be the government's responsibility to vet these schools or have some kind of rating or accreditation or something like that before they offer students thousands of dollars for those schools. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think you've said it well. There ought to be, in our view, a tighter criteria to make these schools eligible to offer these loans. Certainly, rigorous accreditation is a big part of it. I think demonstration of high graduation rate, high job placement rate,
right,
should be part of the vetting before someone is entitled to be part of it.
Right. I mean, to me, that would make sense. So I feel like, the government is. I hate to sound a little bit liberal here, but I think they bear some of the responsibility when it comes to that kind of thing, because they really were not using any kind of criteria and just saying, okay, if you're going to go to the school, here's some money, and not really. Not really vetting these schools, and with the amount of information there is out there with colleges, if you don't know, you don't know. I mean, let's face it, you're looking for a college, so that right there says that you probably you're looking to get educated, if that makes sense, if you understand what I'm trying to say.
You're motivated you're trying to better yourself, and
right.
That's the kind of thing we want people to feel. And I think there are criteria in the program. They're just not as tight as I would like for them to be. And as you, I think, intimated, it's 80 or 90% of all the student loans that are out there these days are on the government's balance sheet, as it were. And so it's not like, credit card programs where you'd have to go to 1,000 different credit card issuers to change their criteria. Most of this is all happening in one place. I think the ability to tighten things up, and frankly, my expectation is things have tightened up somewhat and will tighten up more through time. But I do think the government has a responsibility to think about that issue, and my hope is that they will.
I hope that they do, because when you go buy a car, the car has to be worth a certain amount of money. There's a value put on the car before they'll lend you a particular amount of money for that car. The same thing with a house. There has to be an assessment, and it has to be worth a certain value before a lending company will offer you that mortgage. When you're talking about an education that's worth thousands of dollars, I do not see why there cannot be a criteria that is very similar to that.
I think, too, it was interesting, going back about a year or so, we went across the country and talked to a lot of folks in households, many of which had student debt, and there was a real sense of regret among many of them that they didn't have more information. They hadn't been educated as to what degrees they ought to consider. And I'll give you an example of that. I was in Charleston, South Carolina, and this wonderful gentleman, middle-aged gentleman who was clearly a superb musician and also a very articulate teacher. And he had gotten a degree, both an undergraduate degree and a graduate degree in music, and he made a living by teaching part-time, because full-time jobs are hard to get, part-time in the local schools, and playing what he called gigs around town. Charleston is a great town for that, so I'm sure he has good opportunities. But he's sitting there making probably less than $100,000 a year, had $150,000 of student debt. And he said to me, he looked me in the eye, and he said, my brother-in-law is making $150,000 a year as a plumber and has no student debt. Why didn't anybody sit me down when I was 18 and explain these things to me? And I don't know what the full answer to that is, but I do feel like a deeper understanding of what the job market is like and what things you ought to be thinking about ought to be considered as part of this whole exercise.
I tend to agree with you. My secular work is in education. I happen to teach financial literacy and economics, and I talk to my students about that all the time when it comes to careers. And it seems that schools like to emphasize college, 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 and they don't talk about the plethora of careers that you can get by getting a license or a certificate in 6 months and making six figures. And there are tons of them. Trucking, for example, getting a CDL license. There's a huge trucking shortage right now. Huge. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, you're hitting the nail on the head once again. There's trucking. There's all sorts of jobs in the trades. You and I both know that there's enormous opportunity in technology if you'll learn to code.
Absolutely.
If you'll learn to be a software engineer, and your job opportunities are unlimited there. And I think I'll pick up on something you were suggesting, which is the idea that you have to get a conventional 4-year liberal arts degree, and instead of what might be considered, blue collar training, is a little bit of an ingrained bias across our country that's probably gone too far. You probably need to take the time to tell folks these other jobs will make you more or just as prestigious and give you a wonderful quality of life.
Absolutely. My stylist, you know how much she makes an hour doing my hair? I would like to be her. I'm just saying.
Maybe you should learn to be stylist.
I'm just
maybe
saying.
That's the next career.
And I'm pretty sure cosmetology school is like a year. I'm just saying. And she does pretty darn well for herself. So, and I know quite a few people who are stylists. I have a couple of friends who are realtors. I have a couple of friends who are in the insurance game, and it's a license. So, I mean, college it's not the end all to be all, and you have to really like school. That's the other thing. If you don't love school, don't go to college.
And there's nothing wrong with not liking school. Some folks just have different aptitudes for different things.
There certainly is not. We're up against another break. When we get back, I'd love to talk about some debt relief programs and why people are struggling to pay their debt and that kind of thing. We're talking to Richard Vegg, author of the book. I lost the title of the book. Where did I go?
A Case for a Debt Jubilee.
Sorry about that. Thank you so much. We'll be back on the other side of the break.
Money Talk with Melanie features lively discussions of a wide range of global, domestic, and kitchen table financial topics. Money Talk with Melanie on 98.7 The Coast.
Welcome back to Money Talk with Melanie. We are speaking with Richard Vegg, author of the book, The Case for a Debt Jubilee. We're talking about student loan debt. So let's talk about the actual debt. So we go to school, we get this fabulous degree, and then 6 months later we get the bill. Then what happens?
Well, you go to a bar.
Right.
I think it's the first thing.
You see that ginormous number.
But I think they most often are structured in a way where you don't have to pay until after you receive your degree. But then you're kind of, it's the reality check. You're at a point where you need to start making those payments, and you're given some flexibility on the amount. Some folks are more in a better position to pay off quickly, and we find lots of folks that are still paying 20 or 30 years later. And we came across any number of situations where we met parents who both had some balance remaining on their student loan, who were now being asked to co-sign on their kids' college student loans. And, obviously that's a tough thing.
I didn't know that was a thing. I read that somewhere recently. No one asked my parents to sign on any student loans but that was a long, long time ago. Now maybe for me it was anyway. but maybe that's a new
well,
thing.
It creates, well, that's pressure for the parent.
Sure.
The parent's sitting there thinking, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. I've been paying for my kids and their educations for X many years, and all of a sudden they find themselves a co-signer on a loan. I mean, when we toured the country, I really incorrectly thought that I would find lots of 20 and 30-year-olds that had student debt, but I really wouldn't find anybody older than that had student debt. To my shock, I found everywhere I went, and we visited like 15 different states across the country, I found as many 40 and 50 and 60-year-olds with student debt as I had. I found others, and then I would tell friends. I would say, by the way, you're not going to believe this, but we came across parents who hadn't paid off their loans and were being asked to co-sign for their kids, and they look at me and say, "That's the situation I'm in." So, the pervasiveness of the debt channel to folks who are well above 20 or 30 years old is surprisingly large.
And the thing about this is it's highly predictable. I mean, if you can count, let's just be honest here. If you can count, and this is what I find annoying and why I feel like we should hold the government more accountable with this, because if you can count, and not for nothing, my graduate degree is in public administration, and so there's a huge budgeting piece in that degree, and I found that whole thing irritating because you budget with a deficit. The whole philosophy behind how they budget with that in the public space deals with imaginary money. And that's why that's why I'm saying this. The whole way of thinking deals with all this imaginary money. But if you can count, the whole way that this is structured was completely predictable. And that's why I'm saying that the government is highly accountable to this.
Well, another area, I think, we get back to the government and the desire, at least on my part, for the government to do more education. Another area that we found again and again, and I still come across this a lot, is folks who didn't really understand the compounding effect of interest. So you'll see folks that thought they had a $10,000 loan, stepped away from it, and not to their credit, but stepped away from it and didn't pay attention to it for a while, and came back and the amount's $22,000, and the reporting is perhaps a little less easy to understand than it should be. But again and again, I found folks that kind of had it in their mind that they owed the principal and didn't realize how quickly balances accumulate through the charging of interest.
Well, and I actually just read an article, I think it was today, that only 23 states require financial literacy classes. It used to be 6. When I started teaching financial literacy 10 years ago or so, it was only 6 states in the United States that required a financial literacy class. One of the things that you teach in financial literacy is the concept of compound interest on both sides. What that means on the loan side and what that also means on the savings and investing side. Yep. So economics is still considered an elective because, of course, economics is related, but a completely different class. And if you don't know anything about economics or financial literacy, you aren't going to know any of what we just talked about.
Yep.
So that's
an issue.
That's a whole problem. And when you're filling out all that paperwork, especially now that it's electronic, they don't tell you any of that. And even now they have a whole student loan preparation course that they make you take, which is complete buffoonery as well. It's still as much as I know about the topic, it's still not super helpful. Like, I knew what I was doing when I took the course. I already knew a lot of the information. And I still was like, this is a bunch of buffoonery.
Well, but you have the additional practical issue of, who has time for a lot of that.
Right.
We have an issue. I sit on the board of a couple of the large pension funds here in Pennsylvania, and we have an issue that's not the same, but it's similar in that it's teachers who, are first-time teachers, and they don't understand pensions or defined contribution plans. And, they're overwhelmed because they're learning how to be a teacher, and they're dealing with curriculums, and they may have a couple of kids at home and a spouse that they're, the relationship's important. Where in all that do you fit, the time to learn these things? And so, we contemplate from time to time going to the legislature and asking for a certain amount of this education to be mandated. But it's an issue.
And the thing is, they mandate things that are not all that important, specifically for teachers. Don't even get me started. But
I feel there's another show there somewhere.
That's a whole nother show. That's the day after I retire, I'll do that show, or a series of shows along with the book tour that I'll be doing as well. Now, is it possible to do some kind of debt relief that won't be unfair to people who have already paid their student loan debt? Is that possibly a thing?
I think there is, and nothing's perfect, but because the problem's acute, so you're left with the challenge of trying to figure out something that is fair, because you've put it perfectly, which is, if you forgive person A's debt who wasn't diligent about aggressively repaying their loan, and family B, saved since Junior was 2 years old and took a second job and paid off all the school expenses, how is it fair to give relief to A and not to B? And the precedent that we've taken is the public service precedent. If you serve in the Army, there's certain education benefits you get by virtue of your service. If you serve in the Peace Corps, there's certain education benefits you get by virtue of your services. If you take a job in the not-for-profit sector, today there is a program. It's not a well-used program, and that's a whole subject, but if you make payments for 120 consecutive payments, and you do X hours, X hundred hours of community service, you get the rest of your debt forgiven. So we took those things and we tried to come up with something. And what we came up with is, if you've made 90 consecutive payments, and the payment is once a month, so that's years and years of payments, and you work 800 hours in certified, bona fide, useful, not-for-profit organizations. Let's say it's helping the poor, or who knows what it might be, and you serve those hours, you would then qualify to have the remainder of your debt, amnesty for the remainder of your debt. So whether those are the exact parameters that you would end up deciding, the idea of being able to do useful community service to get some relief for your debt, we think is an idea worth considering.
So in other words, you wouldn't just be given it per se, but you would have some skin in the game.
That's exactly right.
Okay, I guess I could deal with that. But I mean, then you'd have to decide, like, who. Like, they kind of have that now for teachers. I think you can get like $5,000 off if you're in a Title I school for a certain amount of time, or no, $17,000 for if you're in a Title I school for 5 years, something like that. If you're a nurse, if you're a frontline worker of some sort, they have some programs like that for different vocations. And I'm not saying that you don't necessarily deserve that. I don't know. Listen, it's a tough call.
Well, you're trying to thread the needle here, and to me, you could do nothing. But if you do nothing, the whole economy, I think, gets penalized, because having a whole bunch of consumers who collectively have debt that's 172% of GDP on the way to 200% of GDP is the anything but healthy for all of us. And so finding fair, at least somewhat fair programs, not just in student debt, but in mortgage debt and some other areas. Our book actually outlines ideas in several areas we think is worth rolling up our sleeves and trying to figure out. Because we think doing nothing hurts the United States, not just that individual.
And that is that there is a macro argument for that for sure. And it kind of gets back to rule number one in life, which is life is definitely not fair. You're not going to have like fairness in general is a misnomer. It just is. Like if you have a job where there are benefits for people who have children and you don't have kids, well, you're not going to be able to avail yourself of that benefit. And there are people who complain about that. Like, I don't have kids. People who have kids avail themselves of kid benefits. Well, I suppose I could go to HR and complain about the people with kids getting more benefits than I do. But I'm not petty, and I'm a realist, and I know that life isn't fair. If life was fair, I wouldn't be 5'2". I'd be, 5'9" in a German supermodel, but that's not the way life is.
My mom is 4'11".
Yeah, so...
And by the way, it's not only what you just said, which is spot on, but it's those folks that, take advantage of the system. There's always going to be, at least at the margin, there's going to be abuse and fraud in any program you do. So, it's going to take some effort to design a program that minimizes that and maximizes value. And like you said, there's nothing we could design that's going to be perfectly fair. But if it's largely fair and largely benefits the society as a whole, I think it merits the effort to at least try to think it through. And from my perspective, putting a few programs in place like this are going to help us all.
And that's true, and that's the bottom line. I think that's what people have to kind of step back and look at, because when you look at the numbers, and again, it's what I talked about earlier about the math. If you can add, this was completely foreseeable. And if you're an economist, if you're looking at the economy and how much money student loan debt is taking out of the economy, then you know that it really does affect all of us in a negative way. It's affecting the cost of goods in a negative way. It's affecting all of us in a negative way. And so that's the other side of it, which is why we should have, civics, economics, and personal finance as required courses in order to vote, which will also be part of my show and my book about teaching. When I retire.
I like that idea.
I'm just saying, it's all information that you need.
When's this book coming out?
When I retire in 10 more years. I'm just saying. It's called The Angry Educator. You didn't hear it from me.
Oh, we can't wait that long to read that book. We need it sooner than that.
People ask me all the time when I'm writing my book. I already have the title, though. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
It's gonna be a bestseller based on the title alone,
right? Okay, we're up against the break at the end of the hour, actually. So before we leave, tell us where we can buy your book, where we can follow you on social media, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, my name is Richard Vague, and the last name is V as in Victor, A-G-U-E. So you can find all this at richardvague.com. The book is The Case for a Debt Jubilee, and it's easily get on Amazon. And I will tell you, you've got a terrific show. You're a terrific commentator, and it's really been a privilege to be part of it.
Thank you so much, Richard Vague. Excellent information. You've been a fantastic guest. Look for the podcast to be posted on 98.7 The Coast website or on all my social media. I will tag you. You have a great night.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Money Talk with Melanie. Money Talk with Melanie. Thursdays, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern Time on 98.7 The Coast.
Welcome back to Money Talk with Melanie. I'm your host, Melanie Collette. And if you missed the first hour, boy, did you miss it. We had Richard Vague, author of the book, The Case for a Debt Jubilee. We talked to him about political and social aspects of student loan debt, and he made a pretty convincing argument for student loan debt forgiveness. So if you missed the first hour, fear not. The show will be posted as a podcast here on 98.7 The Coast website sometime within the next day or two, and you'll be able to listen to the podcast tomorrow, and you'll be able to catch the whole first hour again. For the second hour, we'll have Ron Hamlin. He is the CEO and founder of Virtual Overload, and Virtual Reload. I'm looking right at the words on the screen, and I keep saying overload. It's Virtual Reload. I'm going to get it. Ron Hamlin, CEO and founder at Virtual Reload. Good grief, Melanie. Virtual Reload. We're going to talk to him about making money with esports. Now, before we do, I want to talk to you about something. Are you in love? Are you having a romantic relationship? But, in this day and age, you really do want to know, is your partner financially responsible? Or are they in financial trouble? Here's how you can tell. Now, some of this is common sense, some of this not so much. You just want to know, can your partner pay the bills or not? Can they pay their own bills, or are they going to get you in financial trouble? Here are some things to look out for. Some red flags, if you will. And listen, and there's in this dating game, in this world, tons of red flags to look out for. Here's some financial ones. If you go in their house and you notice a whole bunch of bills stacked up that are unopened, some yellow envelopes, some pink envelopes, this one's an obvious one. They're probably unpaid bills. That's an obvious sign maybe they're not a good money manager. Just saying. If they have problems with other addictions, like little struggles, little alcohol, little too much alcohol, little too much drugs. Too much drugs? How about no drugs? Just saying. Shopping or something else, their finances are going to have issues. Look out for that. Got to be very careful with situations like that. Inconsistent communication. And by the way, that's an issue in general. We don't do inconsistent communication in the dating game. That's a no-no. But it's also a no-no financially. If they're inconsistent, if they communicate inconsistently in general, their money is probably going to be funny as well. Also, if they avoid sharing their financial information, like if you're, at that point in a relationship where you're discussing your financial situation and they're being vague or sketchy, as I like to call it, which is a nice way of saying dishonest. I try to use very diplomatic words when I'm being mean. So instead of saying you're being a big fat liar from Liar Town, I use the word sketchy. So if they're being sketchy, that's a red flag. If your man is being super ignorant about how things are getting paid, meaning he doesn't know what's going on, especially for a dude. I'm just going to be super sexist here for a moment. Being a man should be about leadership and knowing what's going on. If he's not leading the way and doesn't know what's going on with his finances, dump his butt. He's got to go. He should know what's going on. If he's got a whole lot of credit cards, bad look. shouldn't have a whole lot of credit cards. It means you know nothing about how your credit score works, number one. Because if you have a whole lot of credit scores that lower, a whole lot of credit cards that lowers your credit score, that's a bad look. Probably financially unstable. Just saying. So make sure you look out for that. If you watch his wallet, ladies, I'm just saying. Not to see how much money he's got in it. See if he's got a whole bunch of credit cards in there. Not a good look. Don't do that. If his lifestyle doesn't match with his vocation, not a good look. If he works for McDonald's and he drives a yellow Lambo, something not matching there. That's a problem. Lifestyle not adding up with the vocation. That's a financial problem and probably a legal one. Just say, you may not want to be in the car when he gets pulled over, is all I'm saying. If he's not being honest with you. And listen, if your spidey senses, or what we like to call women's intuition, which is very valuable and I find gets honed in and refined even more as we get older, ladies, if that is going off when he's talking to you, listen to that. He's not being honest. And listen, this is just between us, just a private conversation that we're having. Background checks only cost like $20. That's all I'm saying. If you have questions, just run that background check. Financial information comes right up. I'm not saying that I've done that. I'm just telling you as a friend. Find out about that financial information. If all your activities revolve around shopping, why is that? That's a problem. Think about it. So is that a financial situation? Does that person have a pile of debt? A lot of people have debt, but do they have piles and piles and piles of debt? Think about that. That's a problem. So to review, watch these signs. Piles of bills, struggles with addiction, doesn't have open communication, doesn't know what's going on with their money when you ask like very common questions that you should know, stacks of credit cards, stuff not adding up the way they should be, being dishonest and, I'm sorry, not dishonest, sketchy, and all your activities revolve around shopping. These are the things you want to look out for red flags. I just thought it was a really interesting article, so I picked that to kind of open up the second hour. Now we're going to talk about something really excited. I wasn't excited till I did the research for the show. And I was like, this is kind of an exciting topic. We're going to talk to, I'm going to get this right this time, Ron Hamlin, CEO and founder at Virtual Reload. Yeah. Making money with esports, which apparently you can do. So without further ado, we're going to introduce Ron Hamlin. Good evening.
Hi, Melanie.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. So in the open of the show, the first hour, I talked about who my guests were going to be. And I said that I wasn't like super excited about the esports thing.
Yeah.
And no offense meant, I'm just not a video game girl, but I'm old enough to know that just because like I'm not into it, other people are into it, and I should probably talk about it, right? But then when I did research for the show, I got really super excited because it looks really interesting. I'm like, I may actually even watch a competition, maybe.
Awesome. That would be great.
So tell the audience a bit about your background.
Well, my background is actually in telecom, but I started this company about 3 years ago when I was just looking for something to create that was going to be new. Never having heard of the term esports before, but I've been playing games my whole life. But I learned that there were several colleges around the country that had varsity programs for esports, and a lot of those were also offering scholarships. And the combination of that and my my other side of my life being, a family guy, I've been a foster dad for a while. I'm getting exposed to some of these kids that are in just desperate situations. It was a no-brainer for me to go from, not knowing what esports was to creating something that would help elevate these kids.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, I'm an educator by trade. I teach computer applications, but I also teach financial literacy and economics. So I happen to teach in a computer lab, and it's been my perpetual frustration that the kids are, and I thought this was weird, watching other people play games on YouTube. But I'm old, right? So what do I know? And I'm like, what do you mean you're watching? Right, because you're laughing, right? Because I'm old. I'm like, what do you mean?
No, I'm not laughing because you're old. Because, I talk to a lot of people about this. So it's a very, very common conversation for me to have with people.
Right, because I'm like, why are you watching somebody play a video game? But you have to keep in mind that I come from the age of, like, Pong, when you just watched, a ball go across the screen. So I'm like, why would you want to watch that? This is not making sense to me.
Well, I compare this to, are you a sports fan?
I am a sports fan, yes.
What's your favorite sport to watch?
I would say basketball.
Basketball. Now, have you ever played basketball?
I'm only 5'2", so no.
Okay. Well, either way. You enjoy watching people that are good at playing basketball play basketball, right?
Yes.
There is no difference in that enjoyment that you get from watching basketball than it is for a gamer to watch somebody play a video game at a very, very high level.
Okay.
Gives them the same enjoyment.
And when
it's entertainment, and they may learn something from it, but they also may be watching someone that's at a level that they may never get to as well.
Okay. And when I did the research, I kind of got that. And then when I did the research, I saw all these colleges that had programs, and I was like, what? And so in the beginning, in the opening of the show, I talked about, jokingly, kind of mocking myself, that I'm a very serious person. I'm an academic. And so I was like, ugh, video games, I'm just not interested in in this. And how could you possibly make money, and how can any serious person even call this a sport? And Candy Crush is about as serious as I get as far as video games are concerned. Right. So I was kind of like lukewarm on the topic before I started researching it for the show. So, and I found all this stuff, and I was like, whoa, wait a minute. So this is I think this might be kind of cool, especially when I saw all these college programs that were doing
and on the note of college programs, I've seen the number of colleges that have programs at least double in the last few years. And just about a week or two ago, I live in Greenville, South Carolina, so there is the University of South Carolina, or what they shorten now to U of SC. There are several campuses around the state, and one of those is in Spartanburg. They call it USC Upstate. They just opened an esports arena in their buildings, and I went up for the ribbon cutting there. So they have somewhere around 45 Alienware computers. I believe it was around $1.5 million invested into this whole program, and this coming fall they're going to have a varsity team that they're going to bring in and put on games there.
Okay, so I have questions. All right, so specifically, when we say esports, when we refer to esports, what are we talking about?
That's actually probably where we should have started, but yeah.
It is. I'm sorry. You're right. Good.
Esports is competitive video gaming. So there are however many thousands of video game titles out there right now, and there are only a subset of those that are considered esports. So a game like, I don't know. Sorry, I'm trying to think of a game that would not be an esport, but there's those more casual games. You mentioned Candy Crush.
That's not it.
That would not be an esport, right? So the games that are where there's two sides, and it could be one-on-one or it could be teams, and there is a definitive winner at the end of that matchup. So those games include League of Legends, Call of Duty, Overwatch, Super Smash Brothers. There's about 20 or 25 game titles that fit into this. And the whole thing of an organized event is either a bracketed style tournament or a one-on-one matchup between two teams will compete in that game.
Okay. What part of this is the part that I was confused about. Now, what part of those games, like let's take Call of Duty. I kind of know what that is.
Okay.
Kind of. What part of that is the sport part? I got the E part down.
Okay.
What part of that is the sport?
Yeah. It is not the style. There is a definite difference between traditional sports. We call them analog sports because it's not on a screen.
Oh, that's kind of
versus
derogatory.
An e-sport.
Analog.
Because
it's like the difference between a digital clock and an analog clock. I'm just teasing.
Yeah. It is the competition that is happening that makes it the sport. It is not what is happening on the screen.
Gotcha.
Right. So if we go further into the Call of Duty example, there are several match types that you can get into. One version is you're just killing the other team more than they kill you. Another is you're capturing objectives. So you go into that match and you play until it's over, and there is one team has won over the other one. And that is how the outcome is determined of who wins. And it is the actual competition of what's going on between those two teams that makes it a sport.
I got it. Okay, that makes total sense. So it's kind of the context and application of the word sport.
Yeah.
Okay, I got it. Now, where did that come from? Was it just like a bunch of people who were online playing and then you guys were like, this should be a competition?
Well,
is that how it started?
Somewhat, but it started quite a long time ago. I don't know exactly what year the word esport became a word, but the actual goings-on, the competitions of esports existed since the 90s. There's been, there's actually a couple of shows that talk about some of these things, and one of those was a arcade-style game. I think it was Donkey Kong, actually. And the whole goal of that style of the game was to get the highest score.
Right.
And there was this it was a big deal to be the one that had that highest score, and the guy who was at that point of being that level was able to win, like he won a car and things like that. So there has been this style of competition for a very, very long time. It wasn't necessarily called esports back then, but we can look back at that event and say, yeah, that was an esport at that time. So it's just been something that has grown, and people started. I think Twitch is really what revolutionized it, though. Yeah, do you know what Twitch is?
I've heard of Twitch. I think isn't that where the kids watch the sports? Twitch.
Yeah, that is essentially the platform, kind of like YouTube, but more in a more live scenario. In fact, everything that is on Twitch to watch is in a live setting. They are live streaming that content. So when Twitch came out, people started really getting into watching people play games, and because the money typically follows where people are watching, and it became a monetization area for advertisers and everything else, and when all this money started flooding in, that kind of created this space of, okay, let's actually put on competitions. And the developers that make some of these games, Blizzard and, Activision is the one that makes Call of Duty, but they actually sanctioned.
Okay,
yeah.
we got it. Okay, we're up against a break, but I want to talk about that when we come back.
Okay.
I can't believe you just said Activision. Okay, we're talking to Ron Hamlin. He is the CEO and founder of Virtual Reload. We're talking about making money with esports. We'll be back on the other side of the break.
Money Talk with Melanie on 98.7 The Coast.
Welcome back to Money Talk with Melanie. We're speaking with Ron Hamlin, CEO and founder at Virtual Reload. We're speaking to him about making money with esports. And before the commercial break, you were talking. You mentioned Activision, which I was shocked that you mentioned that company, because I recall Activision having to do with Atari, which may have been around before you were born. Probably dating myself.
Just a little bit. I'm getting up there myself. So
I was like, Activision? What? Isn't that like Atari? The Atari console? And anybody who's younger than, I don't know, 40 or 50 probably has no idea what I'm talking about. But that was like before games were like on the internet and all that stuff.
Yeah. They have been around for a long time. So.
But I'm glad to see they're reinventing themselves and are now in this marketplace.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so the reason I was bringing them up is they're the ones who publish Call of Duty, and then Blizzard has several other titles as well, but the primary one they have for esports is Overwatch. And both of those games have sanctioned leagues by those two developers, where if you want to have a team that is part of that circuit, it's in the around $40 million to purchase a team to have that ability.
I'm sorry. Say that number again?
40 million.
With an M? Million?
Yes, with an M, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. So they're in charge of the league, the company right now.
The upper end of that league, yes. Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha.
So that's like, and I believe that Craft of Patriot fame owns one of those teams.
Wow. Okay. So that's on the high end.
Yeah.
Okay. So are there different leagues? Is there one league? Like, how does that work?
Yeah. So that's another part of it. We're kind of in maybe the wild west of esports right now with that aspect of it. When you look at all of our established sports, NBA, NFL, things like that, those leagues have, there was a point in time where there were multiple leagues of those sports as well. And over time, these really well-known leagues came to be the top of it, right? So from that aspect, where was I going with this? You can have like the smaller, and we've actually created a youth league for several games for people to come in and compete against each other as well. There's people like us elsewhere as well that have either just a team, like there's professional team orgs that just find tournaments or competitions for their players to get involved with and play and compete in. So it's all up and down as far as how that works.
It sounds like this is an industry that is growing almost like it can't keep up with the technology. It feels that way sometimes. The colleges that are getting involved, they're just, some of them don't even know where to start, but they know it's big, and they know it's a way that they can grow their student body as far as the count of students they have on campus, which obviously brings them some more funds. Sure.
But it's, it's another way to help create. This is the thing that I think is the most important part of it, is it gives those kids who are gamers a place to belong, right? Because your high-end esports competitors are not playing football or basketball or those other sports.
Probably not.
That is what they do. They love the game they play, and that's what they get really good at.
Right.
But go back, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, in the times that games were getting popular, and all the parents telling their kids, no, you don't need to be on those games. They're not going to be good for you. So you got this kind of negative stigma in gaming that is still today hard to kind of overcome. And so these kids who secretly or at least with their friends are really wanting to play games but being told they shouldn't, now have a place that they can go and thrive and grow. And it's another pathway for them that they wouldn't necessarily have before.
So, wow. So my understanding is that colleges are giving esports scholarships?
Yes.
How does that even work? Like for an okay, I was going to call it a non-academic. Is it, I don't even know what kind of question to ask. Like, is that considered a non-academic scholarship? It's not, is it considered a sports scholarship? Does it have its own category?
Yeah, so this is another area that some of the schools, some colleges are doing it one way and some are doing it another way.
Okay.
The ones that I have directly spoken with are primarily doing them as athletics scholarships.
Okay.
In fact, they established the esports department underneath their athletics department.
Really?
Part of their athletics department, yes.
Are athletic departments cool with that?
Yeah.
Really?
The schools are the school. Yeah, as far as I know. Now, there is another aspect to this, and Oklahoma University is the one that I have that's a pretty cool example. When you look at esports, now we've talked about the competitive side of esports, but when there is an event to take place and there is a way for people to watch that event, it takes all of the work, the personnel, the technology, all of the things that go into producing and airing, say, an NFL game, has to happen for an esports event.
Right. You need an announcer.
You've got your announcers, your analysts, the video production, the graphic production, all of that stuff that has to go into it. So there are external verticals in esports that are not just the players in the game. And Oklahoma University has developed a program for scholarship that takes into account all of those other verticals as well. So a student might go to OU and study communications with a focus in esports. I don't know specifically what they call their degrees in this, but it'd be like an esports communications degree to become that announcer, and they can have a scholarship for that.
Okay, so it's not even like I'm gonna major in communications and take an elective in esports communication. Like you can major in esports communication.
Yes. Yeah, and a lot of schools, like the version you just mentioned with an elective, there technically you could go to any school that has that degree, a communications degree, right? And kind of focus yourself like you're going through the classes, but you're going to go for esports in that sense, right? Like you could take a communications degree that you may have gotten 10 years ago and apply that to esports in a career now. It doesn't have. It's just a lot of that comes down to marketing messaging. When the school has there's nothing really quote unquote new under the sun, if you will, in this regard. So you could take your graphic design degree that you've learned and apply that to an esports career.
You could. Or
your video production degree that you've earned and apply that to an esports career.
I'm trying to figure out how your 17-year-old convinces their 50-year-old parent to invest in their college education, and they're like, yeah, I'm going to major in esports communication. Like, how? How do you convince? You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. I mean, the 17-year-old could pull up some of the Overwatch live events that they've had for their competitions and give an idea of what that looks like to their parents. Like, that's one way that they could make a case for themselves. The other is talking about the schools by name that are offering these programs. I mean, who wouldn't want their kid to go to a place like OU?
True.
Right? It's a pretty prestigious school to be saying, they're offering this program.
And are they offering like regular athletic scholarships, like you would get a regular scholarship, like full scholarships? Only you're doing esports.
Yeah, I'm not sure as far as the number of like the amount of monies that are being offered. I didn't actually write it down for tonight. There was, like the last couple of years, there's been massive millions of dollars of scholarships offered in esports. And I know of one particular situation. I was mentoring a young man and brought him to when there's a smaller college in our area called Erskine, and they have an esports program. And I brought him to the coach of that school, and he was offered I think it was $28,000 a year he was being offered for a scholarship to go there. And that along with his academics would have been basically a full ride for him.
Okay. All right. We're going to talk more about the money on the other side of the break. We're talking to, We're talking to Ron Hamlin. He's the CEO and founder of Virtual Reload. We're talking about making money with esports. And you're going to be as shocked as I am about the information we're learning here. We'll be back on the other side of the break.
Money Talk with Melanie features lively discussions of a wide range of global, domestic, and kitchen table financial topics. Money Talk with Melanie on 98.7 The Coast.
Welcome back to Money Talk with Melanie. We're speaking with Ron Hamlin, CEO and founder at Virtual Reload. We're talking about making money with esports. And before the break, we were talking about scholarships that get offered at different colleges for esports. And so I'm going to guess that if scholarships are offered at colleges, there must be money to be made in different vocations once you graduate. There must be,
yes.
Right?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't know you were asking me that.
That's okay.
Yes. There is, okay, so I like to compare this to, the NBA and NFL process of going through high school to college to getting selected to join a pro team, okay? There is a very, very small percentage of football players from, high school on that actually get selected to be in the NFL. But if that is your plan and you're banking on getting into the NFL and you don't have you're not going to make money in football. You're going to make money elsewhere, obviously. You're going to go get a career somewhere, but you're not going to make money in football if you don't make that team, okay? With esports, there is kind of a net of a catch where you can still benefit. So if you are seeking the process of going through and getting selected to be on a pro esports team, which would pay you a salary to be on that team and go and attend events, all of that, but you don't make that cut, it is very easy to shift and still be an expert in your game and still make money. And that is as simple as, well, I call it simple, but it's still a process. You can become a streamer on Twitch and make money as a streamer and support yourself. So that's one avenue. But the back to the scholarship process, I was looking at this over the break. It was around $15 million to $16 million in the last couple of years on an annual basis that have been offered in scholarships for esports.
See, now, you can't have dead air because this is radio, and I can't wait until we are streaming live video on the show, because if the audience could see my face right now, the producer is cracking up because of my facial expressions during this entire last hour, every time you say something different, because my face is like, what? And I'm going to offer a public apology right now to my students over the last 5 years or so who have been streaming and watching Twitch and telling me that this is a thing, and I've been telling them that it's not, and to do their financial literacy work. I am sorry. Miss Collette officially apologizes. I'm sorry. I did not know that it was a thing. And there was money. Now, okay, so your company, from what I understand, does coaching. And because you mentioned teams, and different schools have teams, right?
Yes.
That offer scholarships. And there's coaches, and I'm thinking, how do you coach somebody to do a video game? Because I thought, ignorantly, obviously, that like with video games, like either you suck or you don't. Like either you're good at this video game or you don't. I didn't know you could like be coached in Call of Duty.
Yeah, you can learn the skill just like you would learn baseball or soccer or football or any of those other sports. You go on that field at whatever age you first get into it. You have no idea how the game is played. You've never done it before, but you can be taught how to play that game. And that's the same thing with video game esports. So you can just enjoy, get in and play a game on your own and have fun. That's typically how people get into it in the first place, because they want to have fun with it. Not that actually competing isn't fun, but from the beginning.
But do you have to? Do you okay? So with a video game, is it like physical sports where you have to have a natural born talent, like with basketball or football or something like that?
You
or
don't even have to be.
You could coach me in Call of Duty.
Yes.
Get out.
No, you can be taught. You don't even have to be fully physically normal. Is that the way to put this, PC-wise?
Nope.
In other words, you could have a physical disability and still play video games at a high level.
Really?
There are all sorts of adaptive controllers that allow people to do that.
Oh, of course there are. So, okay. So, all right. So if that's
Of course there are.
Oh, honey.
That was a great response. I like that.
Well, because yeah. Okay, so if that's the case, though, how do schools make the distinction of who to give scholarships to and who not to? Like, what kind of school?
Great
like,
question.
Is there a test?
So right now, because we're still very early, like all these schools that have developed programs are in their, first, second, third year of having a program. They haven't been around for an incredibly long time yet.
Uh-huh.
So most of the coaches that I've talked to, they're like, we're just looking for a student who has good grades and has a passion for gaming. But that's not going to be a forever thing. There is going to have to become a point of, well, they've got 100 applicants and they've got 5 spots on the team. How do they choose the 5 people out of those 100?
Right.
There's going to have to be some level of assessment there. So there's multiple ways to do that. There's one, and it's probably the least desired, but it's still out there, is you can pull up any game that you play that's a competitive game, or a majority of them. Some of them don't have this, but most of them do. Most of the popular ones do. Go to the website of the game, put in your profile name, and it will show all of your stats that you've ever had in that game. Your wins, your losses, your kills, your deaths, all of the things that matter in the game. Your ranking, all of that. Now that is one piece of the information. The other things that they're going to be looking for is someone who has been on a team or has been coached. Because if you could be really, really great numbers-wise on that screen, but if you can't be taught or coached, you're going to make a really bad esports teammate on that college team.
That makes sense, and that's like with any sport.
Yeah. So they're going to be looking for people who have been coached and also people who have actually attended competitions before.
Okay. Now, this place where you go to look at your scores and kills, bizarre, but that I know it's a gaming thing. Okay. I know they're not real deaths, but still. So is there like one official virtual place where the gaming people keep their kills that everybody goes to and says, this is the official kill place? No, I'm just kidding.
For that particular game, yeah. So like Call of Duty has a site you go to and put in the information. Fortnite has a site you go to and put in the information. Halo has a website. All these. We actually have a player resume form on our website that players can put their stat link into, and it would be there so that recruiters can find them, because that's one of our reasons for existing, is being that bridge between the home living room gamer and the college or professional side of it.
Okay.
So we want to be able to create that connection. So we have that, but there's we actually spoke with a company that had kind of tried to develop a one stop for all games kind of website.
Right.
But there were some limitations with how that information is pulled, so it's that actual specific one stop is probably not feasible. But if you're looking for a League of Legends player to come onto your team, you can look their information up in order to determine, how well they've done before. So.
Okay.
But you have to go to the League of Legends website and put in their profile name to find that.
Okay. So what would be the purpose, unless you're going to be doing one of these peripheral jobs in the esports realm, like the communications piece or the graphics piece or the merchandise piece, right? Like if you're just going to be doing esports, like just doing the games, what would be the purpose of going to college for that?
So if you're just going to be an athlete, an esports athlete,
right,
and you're not planning on doing the other side of esports,
right,
then in some ways I could say that college is not needed.
Right. That's what I would
You can
think.
go straight from high school. In fact, I believe there are even some high schoolers on professional teams out there. You don't have to go to college. It's not like the NFL where they're going to bring in a graduating high schooler and recruit them to their team.
Right.
That's never going to happen. But in esports, that can happen. There's no you've got to go through the college route to get there.
Right.
The primary purpose of the college opportunity is you're the level of player that is not going to get professional to the professional skill level, but you're good enough to be on a college team, and you're in that way you're also good enough to have a scholarship. So you're going to use esports as a tool, as a vehicle to get the degree you're actually looking to get.
Gotcha.
Mechanical engineering, computer engineering, doctor, whatever.
Oh, well, darn
anything you're looking to do.
That makes sense.
So
like what I'm hearing is if your kid's a gamer, if you're tired of your kid playing games all day, and he's going to school, you may want to look into that esports scholarship.
Yeah.
Like you may want to go that route. And I'll tell you, I know the kids are really into it. I find it to be a huge distraction. Now, from a coaching perspective, how many hours a week, or do you even have a number? Like, would you I'm sure coaches of different sports have different recommendations on like how many hours of practice, how many, for runners, like how many hours you should run or lift or whatever.
Yeah.
But do you have a recommendation of like how many hours you should play a game? Does it vary from game to game?
It does vary. I don't have a solid number at the moment, but I would say if you are being coached as opposed to trying to figure it out by yourself,
right,
you're going to need fewer hours practicing with a coach as opposed to playing by yourself to get to the same skill level. So that's one aspect that coaching can bypass some of that lengthy time it takes to learn skills. But the reason that there is a recommendation of a couple hours a day at least of playtime because of that process of muscle memory and reaction and all of that kind of stuff. Because you can't some of this is like because you repeat it you get better. Some of it is what do you do when you're repeating it to get better. That's the coaching side. When you go into the game, what are you focusing on doing? That's the coaching. But when you go into the game and you're doing that thing, you need to do it hundreds of times to get to the point of it being just second nature and being able to be good at it.
That makes sense. Okay, so there's a few ways to make so you can on one level you can use esports to get a scholarship to go to college and maybe get a degree and do something that you want to do professionally. On the other side, you can actually make money in esports by getting on a team and being salaried. You can do it by entering actual competitions, going head to head, and winning competitions. That way, you can do it also through merchandising or being somewhere within the esports realm, which is an analyst, communications, video, any area of regular sports. Esports has the same set of vocations that you would need.
Yep. Yeah, on the note of winning money, there are a couple of massive events that go on. The one that is repeating every year is the League of Legends Championship. The number of people who watch that championship outnumber those who watch the Super Bowl. And the prize amount, what they call the purse for that event, is $30 million or so every year. And the other one I love to point out is with Fortnite. Now, as far as I know, they've only done this once. I don't think they've repeated it. But they had, a couple of years ago, they had what they called the Fortnite Open. Is that right? Something like that. And there was about $30 million available. The kid who won overall out of the 100 people that competed brought home $3 million.
$3 million?
And he was 16 at the time.
Shut the front door. What? Okay,
Yeah.
Now I have to assume that they have sponsors, because there isn't that kind of money.
In that situation, the money for the Fortnite event came from Epic, who's the production of Fortnite, and that's because of how Fortnite became so popular. They received way more money than they expected. It's a free-to-play game, and they made millions on the microtransactions that the kids are buying because, they want their character to look really cool. So because they had so much more money coming in than they thought they were going to get, they're like, we're going to give this back. So that $30 million purse for the Fortnite event was from Epic.
Wait a minute. Wait. So there was all this money floating around, and not one corporate sponsor got their hands on any of it?
Well, I'm sure there was. Yeah, I'm sure there were sponsors as well. Yes. But
we're up against the close of the show. Can you please tell people how they can get in touch with you, where they can follow you on social media?
Yeah, so we are The Virtual Reload for Twitch and Facebook, and then Instagram and Twitter, just Virtual Reload. Our website, virtualreload.com. They can find us there.
That was excellent. Thank you so much. I learned a lot, and I'm sure my audience did too. Ron Hamlin from Virtual Reload, thank you very much for being on Money Talk with Melanie this evening. I'd also like to thank my first hour guest, Richard Begg, for being on the show. He talked to us the first hour about political and social aspects of student loan debt. I want to thank everybody for listening. If you're listening to this as a podcast, thank you so very much. I want to thank John for being on the board this evening. Thank you, everyone else who is listening. And remember, all of this is very important, because after all, it's your money. Have a great night.
Money Talk with Melanie. Money Talk with Melanie. Thursdays, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern Time on 98.7 The Coast.